And good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Musings. Happy Tuesday to you. I appreciate you being with me here again on Morning Musings. I want to remind you, all right off the bat, of our upcoming discussion of the Resurrection Feast, i.e., Sukkot. Resurrection Feast fulfilled. As you can see, it's a very large book. It is. I almost hesitate to say it's comprehensive because there was a ton of stuff I wanted to include in it. But I mean, this thing is really big, right? But it's one of the most fascinating studies you will ever engage in. Okay, so this book is normally $25.95, pardon me, plus $7.95 shipping. For the month of September 2024, U.S. orders only, when you order Resurrection Feast Fulfilled, I'm going to give you free of charge my book, Can God Tell Time? Normally $2.95 plus $4.95 shipping on this particular book. So, as you can tell, that is a significant saving because, once again, for the month of September 2024, U.S. orders only, total delivered price, $20. Going to sell you this book for $20 postpaid. I'm going to give you free of charge and free postage, Can God Tell Time? So, and by the way, the feasts were all, quote, appointed feasts. They were designated times for God to foreshadow the consummation of a scheme of redemption. Okay, yes, whoops, sorry about that. Hope you caught all that I just said. Okay, so Daniel 9 tells us that the 70 weeks were determined to bring in everlasting righteousness. You know, I had an encounter, if you please, on Facebook with a former preterist, and he was saying, well, there's nothing to suggest in the infinitives of the Hebrew text of Daniel 9 to suggest that all of those things had to be fulfilled within the 70 weeks. Then why did he say 70 weeks are determined for this? You know, I've said this before. It's absolutely amazing, and it's sad to me how people get so desperate to avoid the reality and the truth of covenant eschatology that they just grasp at any broken straw that comes across. Now, people can say, well, Preston, what do you know about the Hebrew infinitives? And my response to that is not one hen scratch. Nope. But you know what? I can read the folks who do understand the Hebrew extremely well. All right? And I've never yet read a true scholar that remotely suggested, now might there be one out there? Maybe so. But I've never yet found one who suggested, well, some of the things within the 70 weeks would be fulfilled, but, you know, some of the others would be fulfilled outside of the 70 weeks. No. Now, here's what's interesting. Some post-millennialists and even some amillennialists do try to tell us, now they don't justify it based upon the infinitives, okay? They don't do that at all. But what they do is they base it upon their a priori, their presuppositions about the countdown. And here's what I mean. Men such as Kenneth Gentry, for instance, they say, well, 70 weeks are determined on your people in your city. And in Daniel chapter 9, we are told that the city would be destroyed. However, Gentry says, we're not told that the city would be destroyed within the 70 weeks. Well, yeah, we are, because 70 weeks are determined on your people and on your holy city. 70 weeks are determined. But Gentry would have it read this way. Pardon me. 70 weeks are determined to determine the fate of the people and the city. That's not what it says. It's not what it hints at. It's not an implication. But because Gentry can't have, according to his calculations, Gentry cannot have the end of the 70 weeks in AD 70 at the destruction of Jerusalem. It doesn't fit his paradigm. Therefore, he tries to find a way out of it. And to say, by the way, the 70 weeks ended in AD 34-35. Well, let me remind you that last week, and I've got to hurry here, last week I shared with you 70 weeks are determined to finish the transgression, which meant to fill up the measure of sin. Listen, folks, even Kenneth Gentry doesn't believe that Israel had filled up the measure of their sin in 34-35 AD. Okay? Now, mind you, Kenneth Gentry, in commenting on the infinitives, actually says the infinitives prove that all 6 constituent elements were to be fulfilled within the 70 weeks. But then he jumps ship. And he says, well, actually, Israel didn't fill up the measure of their sin within the 70 weeks. Go back and watch the video in which I demonstrate Israel did not fill up the measure of their sin in 34-35 AD. But here's what the text of Daniel 9 shows us. And by the way, I want to urge you, go to BibleGateway.com. That's BibleGateway.com. And look up, look up Daniel chapter 9, 24. All right? And then look up every English translation of Daniel 9:24. I apologize for my throat today, my voice. And what you are going to find, and by the way, do this for Daniel 9:26 and Daniel 9:27, and you can only look up one verse at a time in all of the respective English translations, but do that. And what you are going to find, to return to the point about Kenneth Gentry and the view of many, many others, post-millennialists especially, is they tell us 70 weeks are determined to determine the fate of the people in the city, but that's not correct at all. And if you go to Daniel chapter 9, 26 and 27, and you look those verses up in all English versions, you're going to find a great host of translations that say that 70 weeks are determined to bring the destruction that has been determined, referring to Daniel 9. In other words, these translations are communicating the idea that Daniel 9 is the determination of the fate of the people in the city. Well, how could it not be? You know, verse 26. After the 69th week, Messiah shall be cut off, and the people of the prince who shall come shall destroy the people or the city and the sanctuary. Now let me ask you a question. Would Messiah be cut off within the 70 weeks? Well, he'd be cut off after the 69th week. That means he would be cut off in the 70th. Not after it, within the 70 weeks. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So here's what people have to do. Well, yes, the death of Jesus would be within the 70 weeks, no question about that, in the middle of the week. But then you see, Daniel 9:26 says, and, you know, that is a coordinating conjunction to join equal things. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. But what Gentry and others like him have to do, they have to go to Daniel 9:26 and say, after 69 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off. Stop. Insert a gap of approximately 40 years, and the fate of the city will be destroyed. Or, excuse me, the fate of the city will be determined. Well, once again, that's not what it says. Now, I'm a firm believer in the feast days, as we will discuss at length in my discussion of the resurrection feast fulfilled. And there was an interim between Pentecost, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. But does that mean that the final 3 feast days lay outside of the 70 weeks? No, it does not. I'm almost out of time here. Anyway, here's what I want you to see. In the Septuagint translation of Daniel 9, and by the way, this translation is supported by many, many translations of the Masoretic text, although the Masoretic text translations are not quite as precise, not quite as clear. They certainly lend themselves to the translation that I'm about to share with you here momentarily. Pardon me. But not as precisely. Here's what I mean. And a preliminary comment here. I've had some people object and say, well, why are you appealing to the Septuagint? Septuagint, we should never use it. And my question is, why not? Do you realize, ladies and gentlemen, the New Testament writers quote from the Masoretic text something like 38 times, if I remember correctly. They quote from the Septuagint 230 plus times. Now, look, all you have to do is go to good old Google and just type in use of the Septuagint, or LXX, which is the abbreviation, obviously, in the New Testament. And you'll find this verified. Let me reiterate this. This is incredible, and it's important. The New Testament writers quote from the Masoretic, that is to say, the Hebrew Old Testament, some 38 times. They quote from the Septuagint translation over 230 times. Now, if that doesn't tell us something, I don't know what does. Obviously, the New Testament writers had no problem with the Septuagint. Now, does that suggest that we just blindly accept the Septuagint in every single one of its renderings? No. We have to be judicious. We have to do the comparisons. We have to see how the New Testament used the verses in question. But nonetheless, the fact that the New Testament writers cite the Septuagint over 230 times should make us hesitant before we just casually wave our hand and say, well, we shouldn't even be using the Septuagint. But I'm just going to drop this with you, and then we'll finalize it tomorrow. All right? I told you I didn't know if I could get it all in. In the Septuagint of Daniel chapter 9, verse 26, at the end of the appointed time, and this is Suntelia to Kairu in the Greek, in the Septuagint. Now, let me ask you to consider the following question that we will pick up on and answer tomorrow. Daniel says, at the end of the appointed time. Suntelia means consummation or end. Kairu is from kairos, which means the divinely appointed time. So here's the question to close with today for your consideration, and we will answer it tomorrow. What is the only appointed time in Daniel 9:24 through 27. Okay? What is the only appointed time in Daniel 9:24 through 27? There's only one right answer. So I'll see you on the flip side.